Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. Beginning on Tuesday, June 4th, 2024, and every subsequent Tuesday until June 16th, 2024, new episodes of the Star Wars series entitled The Acolyte premiered on the Disney Plus streaming service. In total, 8 episodes were aired over a period of 7 weeks, beginning with the first 2 episodes on June 4th, and yours truly watched every single episode, which is something that I absolutely do not recommend that anyone else do. Why? While I reviewed each of the 8 episodes in 7 previous videos that I released over the course of the show's run on Disney Plus, with the first video covering episodes 1 and 2, the intent of this video is to cover the most significant overall problems with this series, which includes a number of very fundamental problems centered on how badly the series was written. But before proceeding, I'd like to ask everyone to please like this video, please share the video on social media, please subscribe to support this channel, and please press the bell to receive notifications. Thanks! From the very beginning, The Acolyte was originally marketed as follows. An investigation into a shocking crime spree pits a respected Jedi Master against a dangerous warrior from his past. As more clues emerge, they travel down a dark path where sinister forces reveal all is not what it seems. The first sentence essentially covers what the show's first 2 episodes are about, while episodes 3 through 8 cover the last, more vaguely written sentence. But the phrase, "more clues emerge," in the second sentence was, by itself, a giveaway to the fact that this show was going to be full of mystery boxes, and it is. And I'll reveal what the sinister forces in this series are supposed to be too later in this video. But in terms of the various teasers and the May 4th trailer that were released for the show prior to its premiere, they tended to focus on the fight sequences between the character of May, as played by the actress Amandla Stenberg, who thinks she's God's gift to humanity, and Jedi Master Indara, as played by Carrie-Anne Moss. And that fight sequence occurs in the first scene of the first episode, and then it's over, while the runtime for the entire series is around 5 hours and 23 minutes long. And trust me, more than 90% of that lengthy runtime is not fight sequences. Then what exactly occurs in this series? I'll give you a short series synopsis that sure as heck isn't going to take 5 hours and 23 minutes to explain. Episode 1. On the planet Ueda, May challenges, fights, and kills Jedi Master Indara. The Jedi initially blame her twin sister, Osha, who's also played by Stenberg, because she used to be the Padawan of Jedi Master Sol, who's played by Jung-jae. Jedi Knight Yord Thandar, as played by Charlie Barnett.
But if you can't look and see that Anakin blowing up the Death Star possibly killed millions and millions of people,
and his annoying Padawan travel to the Trade Federation spaceship where Osha works to arrest her for murdering Indara. They put her onto a droid-operated prison ship, which then gets taken over by other prisoners who escape. They leave Osha behind, and she crash lands on the frozen planet of Karlak. Then on Coruscant, green-skinned Jedi Master Vernestra Rwoh, as played by Leslye Headland's actual wife Rebecca Henderson, orders Sol to retrieve Osha. He in turn takes his current Padawan Jeki, as played by Daphne Keane, and Yord Thandar with him to Karlak. While en route, Sol admits to them that Osha had a twin sister named May. But Jeki and Yord tell him that there's no record of that in the Jedi's database. When they find Osha on Karlak, she tells Sol that she had a vision of May and believes she's alive. Sol believes her. Episode 2. On the planet Olega, May wants to kill another Jedi, who I named Smelly Master Torben, as played by Dean Charles Chapman, because he's been continuously meditating for 10 years, presumably without eating, bathing, or going to the bathroom during that entire time. But after getting him to awaken, May convinces Smelly Torben to voluntarily drink a glowing green poison that her buddy Camille, as played by Manny Jacinto, had made for her. Sol, Jecki, Yord, and Osha also arrive on Olega and find May, who then fights Sol using her handy-dandy Ginsu steak knives and Chinese martial arts skills. But she escapes and steals a car from some unknown alien as she and Osha then see each other for the first time in 16 years. Turns out that May's motivation for killing Jedi was believing that they had killed Osha, but that's going to get a bit convoluted in Episode 7. Episode 3. On the planet of Brendok 16 years before the events of Episodes 1 and 2, younger versions of Osha and May are scheduled to undergo the rite of ascension to become full-fledged lesbian space witches like their mothers named Anasia, as played by Jodie Turner-Smith,
Yes.
and Coral, as played by Margarita La Viva. After an awful lesbian space witch chant,
Power 1, Power 2, the power of many.
May goes through with the rite, but then 4 Jedi, which includes Sol, Indara, Smelly Torben, and Wookiee Jedi Kel Naka, as played by Juna Suotamo, show up at the lesbian space witch's fortress, wanting to see them and the children. So Osha doesn't go through with the rite, which she didn't want to do in the first place. The Jedi then ask and later test the girls, and Osha wants to leave with the Jedi, but May doesn't want to and decides to prevent Osha from leaving by locking her in their room and starting a fire. And after the fire spreads, all of the lesbian space witches appear to be dead as Sol rescues Osha from the burning fortress and escapes believing that all of them, including May, are dead. And that's what Sol tells Osha on board the Jedi ship as it travels back to Coruscant. Episode 4. Back in the present day, May and Camille are on the planet of Kofar looking for Kel Naka so that she can kill him, even though her motivation for killing him is no longer valid since Osha is alive. May then suddenly decides that she doesn't want to kill Kel Naka and would rather turn herself in. So she separates herself from Camille. But back on Coruscant, after a scene with Ki-Adi-Mundi, who shouldn't be alive 100 years before the Phantom Menace, Rose sends Sol, Jecki, Yord, and a bunch of unnamed Jedi extras to go to Kofar to retrieve Kel Naka. Osha, who was going to leave, goes along instead at the request of Sol. But back on Kofar, May finds Kel Naka's home, and then she finds him already dead, presumably from a lightsaber. Then, after the Jedi show up outside of Kel Naka's home, they encounter the Sith that I named Darth Smileyface, who blows them all away using the Force after pushing Osha aside. Episode 5. Still on Kofar, Darth Smileyface kills all of the Jedi, including Jecki and Yord Thandar, with the exception of Sol. But they can see that Darth Smileyface is actually Camille, because Jecki had knocked his helmet off before he killed her. She and Yord appear to have recognized him. Then, after Camille gives Sol an exposition about himself and his views, Osha stops Sol from killing Camille, but puts her flashlight onto Camille's back to attract the space-weighing doodles to carry him away. Then May stuns Osha and swaps clothes with her. May, then pretending to be Osha, leaves Kofar with Sol, while Osha is left with Camille. Episode 6. On Camille's unnamed mystery planet, Osha awakens on an air mattress inside of Camille's cave that he lives in on an island that I dubbed Gilligan's Island. Then, after Osha sees Camille naked while he goes bathing in a dirty lagoon, she finds his lightsaber, but she doesn't kill him as he sweet-talks her. And after he fixes his Darth Smileyface helmet, he invites Osha to try the helmet on, which she does. But over the planet Kofar in the Jedi ship, Sol realizes he has May, who he then restrains on a bed and takes her back to Brendok. Episode 7. In a rehash of Episode 3, we are given the reasons why the Jedi were on Brendok 16 years earlier, to study its flora to determine whether a vergence had occurred there. Many of the same scenes from Episode 3 are shown again, but from different camera angles. But it turns out that Sol accidentally killed Mother Anastasia after she turned herself into black smoke, much like when Ezra Miller's character of Credence Barebone in the Fantastic Beasts movies turned himself into an Obscurial. Afterwards, Endora tells Sol that they will tell the Jedi Council the truth about what happened there on Brendok, which technically is only half of the truth, which is also what Sol tells to Osha. Episode 8! May escapes the restraints that Sol put her in on the Jedi ship as it arrives at Brendok. She then gets into an escape pod and Sol chases her through the planet's ring system as pesky Bloodhound Basil, for no apparent reason, sabotages the ship's wiring so that Sol loses control. But Sol and May each land on Brendok separately and both go to the abandoned lesbian space witch's fortress. Then Kamir and Osha arrive using his spaceship. Sol and Kamir then fight each other using their lightsabers, and Sol wins but doesn't kill Kamir. May and Osha find each other in their old bedroom, talk, and then fight each other. Distracted by the arrival of yet another spaceship that has Ro, minor Jedi replacement character Mog, and a bunch of other unnamed Jedi extras, May runs away from Osha and goes outside and talks to Sol, who admits to killing their mother. Osha hears Sol admit to killing their mother and then admits lying to her about whether she could ever have become a Jedi. Angry, Osha force chokes Sol and he dies, so she and May run off to the yellow bunta tree together. Kamir sees Vernestra Ro, who senses him, and it turns out that he's a former Padawan of hers, which explains the whip-like scar on his back. Kamir then finds Osha and May under the yellow bunta tree, where Osha commits to Kamir, and Kamir then erases May's memory at her request. Osha and Kamir then escape, while the Jedi find May and take her to Ro. Back on Coruscant, Ro blames the Jedi deaths on Sol as she lies to cover up the truth in front of a group of Republic senators before seeing Jedi Master Yoda at the very end. The series ends with Kamir and Osha as they are shown holding each other's hands around a lightsaber on Gilligan's Island, while an ugly creature that many believe is Darth Plagueis is skulking around inside of a cave. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to draw your attention to the upper left-hand corner of the video. If you see that elapsed time value, that's how long it took me to say the synopsis for all 8 episodes of The Acolyte, 9 minutes and just over 9 seconds. And if you think that was a long time, just imagine sitting through all 5 hours and 23 minutes of this series like I did. Instead of you having to do that, I just saved you 5 hours and 14 minutes of your life by explaining this entire series to you in only 2.83% of the time that you would have spent watching all 8 episodes for yourselves. And just think, that 5 hours and 23 minutes of runtime cost Disney $180 million to produce, which I described in just over 9 minutes. Just some food for thought, folks. Now, if you followed the synopsis I just gave, congratulations! But if you didn't, don't worry because this is a very convoluted and stupid series. And to demonstrate that, let's talk about the show's characters for a moment. Osha is a protagonist throughout most of the series until she turns into an antagonist when she kills Sol in episode 8. May begins as an antagonist in episode 1, but then becomes a protagonist in episode 4, before becoming an antagonist again in episode 5, before she once again becomes a protagonist in episode 8. But since she does nothing to stop Osha from killing Sol in episode 8, she ends up being an antagonist again along with her sister. I can see a character changing over the course of a story, but why would any writer want a character to switch sides 5 times over the course of 8 episodes? Would you classify that as good writing? Is this what's being taught in writing classes across America? As far as I'm concerned, May's persistent wishy-washiness alone exemplifies the stupidity of Leslye Headland's deplorable writing, but it's not the only example. There are more examples coming in this video. Sol is a protagonist, mentor, and hero from episodes 1 through 6, but then becomes an accidental villain in episode 7, before he then further humiliates himself in episode 8, shortly before Osha kills him. Kamir is a secondary character and helper for May from episodes 2 through 5, until he's revealed to be Darth Smiley Face, at which point he becomes a villain, and then a love interest for Osha in episodes 6 and 8. Vernestra Rwoh is persistently wooden and is only ever concerned with how the Senate views the Jedi, which includes lying to senators and altering the facts, seemingly with the approval of Jedi Master Yoda, who's only ever shown very briefly at the end of the series. So there are no good major characters or heroes in the Acolyte at all, because all of them are either morally ambiguous, wishy-washy, hypocritical, or just outright bad. The two secondary characters of Jeki and Yord Fandar are the only actual good guy characters in the show, even though Yord is also annoying. And Mog wasn't in the series long enough in episodes 6 and 8 for me to form an opinion about him, aside from the fact that as a replacement for Jeki and Yord, he wasn't even a secondary character. He was essentially just a minor third-string character. So just to be clear, the complete lack of any morally good main characters in The Acolyte was by the intentional design of Harvey Weinstein's former personal assistant, Leslye Headland, because her goal was to paint the Jedi and the Jedi Order itself as being hypocritical and corrupt to the point where they are effectively her villains in this series. In other words, as I alluded to earlier in the video when I was talking about the show's marketing and what the sinister forces are that the marketing was referring to, yeah, you guessed it, the sinister forces in The Acolyte are the Jedi and the Jedi Order itself, because that's how Leslye Headland wants you to regard them. And no, I'm not making that up. Making the Jedi and the Jedi Order itself look as corrupt and hypocritical as possible is Leslye Headland's sole purpose for this series. And now ask yourselves this: how many Star Wars fans actually want to see the Jedi and the Jedi Order besmirched to a point that it's not even recognizable as a force for good in the Star Wars universe? Is it any wonder why hardly anyone actually watched this series, as is now being reported by Nielsen? Is it any wonder why the audience scores for The Acolyte are incredibly low on Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, and Metacritic? Ultimately, The Acolyte is the product of a mind warped by hatred that was never intended to be anything that actual Star Wars fans would want or like. Headland's mystery box-laden writing was atrocious and left out multiple details such as insufficient backstories for the killed Jedi characters so that the audience could experience any sympathy for them, a complete lack of details regarding how May survived on Brendok alone after the lesbian space witches were killed, how she learned how to pilot spaceships, how she was able to leave Brendok in the first place, or how she met Kamir. And a complete lack of evidence as to who was persecuting the lesbian space witches, since their hatred of the Jedi doesn't really pan out when the Jedi arrive on Brendok and have no idea about who or what they are. Leslye Headland was so consumed with making the Jedi and the Jedi Order look as bad as possible that she left many unanswered questions and numerous plot holes in this series. And let's face it, in reality, since the only point of the Acolyte series was to paint the Jedi and the Jedi Order in the worst light possible, the series adds absolutely nothing to the overall Star Wars mythos, but what it does do is to damage the franchise even further in the eyes of its dwindling fanbase and normies alike. Plus, given that none of the major characters in this series are in any way likable, how many viewers in the end are actually going to care about them or this series after watching it? Probably not that many, and that alone makes this entire series utterly pointless and stupid, including this one final example of Headland's stupid writing that I'm going to share. May never saw her sister Osha get killed, but she had seen their mother killed by Sol with her own eyes. But her motivation for killing Jedi was thinking that they had killed Osha when she never saw that happen, but not because she had seen Sol kill their mother. That makes no sense whatsoever, but Headland didn't want to give that plot point away that Sol had killed Mother Anacia too early, so she came up with a lame reason that ultimately makes no sense when compared with what May actually saw. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was truly stupid writing. So I will close this video out by saying this. If you are a genuine Star Wars fan, chances are you will hate this series, so there's not much point in watching it. If you aren't a Star Wars fan, why bother watching it in the first place since it's supposed to be a Star Wars series? The fact of the matter is this. The Acolyte series was intended for absolutely no one. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button, and please feel free to share a comment. If you'd like to help support this channel, please press the red subscribe button, and please press the bell to receive notifications for new content. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.